Remember flipping through the Sears catalog and circling the things you dreamed about? If you grew up in America in the late 70s, you don't just remember it, you feel it. You feel the weight of that thick catalog in your hands, the soft drag of your finger across its glossy pages, the excitement that built slowly page after page, like a secret only you knew how to unlock. Back then, it wasn't just a book. It wasn't just paper and ink. It was imagination printed and bound, a universe delivered to your doorstep, ready to turn an ordinary afternoon into something unforgettable. I can still see it so clearly. The catalog sitting in the middle of the living room table, its cover shining just a little under the warm amber light of a lamp. Maybe the house was quiet. Maybe dinner was in the oven, and you could smell something familiar in the air. Maybe the TV was playing some game show in the background. But in that moment, everything faded away, except you and those pages. You didn't flip through them fast. No one did. You took your time. You treated every page like it was the entrance to a new daydream. Maybe you stretched out on the carpet, arms forward, feet kicking behind you without realizing it. Maybe you sat cross-legged on the floor, leaning in so close that the world outside the page didn't even exist. And when you found something you loved, something that made your heart skip just a little, you reached for the family pencil and circled it with the kind of hope only a child truly understands. The Sears catalog had this magical ability to make an ordinary living room feel like a doorway to the future. It held possibilities, small ones, big ones, and sometimes ones we never actually got. But the dreaming, that was the real treasure. And it wasn't just your moment either. It was a family moment, a quiet, unspoken gathering. Someone would sit on the couch and leaf through the clothing section. Another person would lean over their shoulder, and kids would wait, sometimes impatiently, for their turn to dive into the toy pages. I remember that feeling clearly. The warmth of the room, the smell of old carpet and coffee, the sound of pages being turned with soft patience. The whole house seemed to settle into a slower rhythm. Whenever that catalog was open, a rhythm we hardly notice anymore, a rhythm most people today have never even experienced. Back then, dreaming took time, hoping took time, waiting took time, and maybe that's why those memories feel so precious now. The Sears catalog didn't just show us products, it showed us possibilities. It wasn't a quick scroll, it wasn't an impulse buy, it was a ritual, a moment suspended in time. Today, we're going back there, to the color, the light, the warmth of those afternoons when the world felt simple, slower, and somehow more alive. So settle in, get comfortable, maybe close your eyes for a moment, because what we're about to revisit isn't just an old catalog. It's a doorway back to childhood, to imagination, to a time when waiting made everything sweeter and dreaming felt like a part of growing up. Soft, nostalgic page flip SFX. Let's begin. You know, the Sears catalog never just showed up, it arrived. And in 1978, that arrival meant something. Sometimes it would slide into the mailbox with a soft thud. Sometimes a parent would bring it in with the groceries, holding it like something fragile. And every now and then, you'd find it sitting on the kitchen table when you walked in after school, waiting for you like a small gift. I remember the feeling of seeing it there. The cover was always the first spark, bright colors, smiling faces, clothes and toys that looked impossibly new. The paper smelled like fresh ink and promise, and I can still hear the sound it made when you lifted it, that little whisper of pages shifting under their own weight. Before anyone even opened it, the house seemed to change. The living room felt warmer. The kitchen felt quieter. It was like the catalog carried its own kind of hush, a gentle invitation to slow down. In our house, the arrival was almost a signal. Someone would call out, "Hey, the Sears catalog's here." And no matter what we were doing, we'd drift toward the table, not rushing, just drawn in, like the pull of a soft memory you haven't had yet. Parents saw possibilities. New sheets, a blender, school clothes, something practical. Kids saw pure magic, toys that seemed alive, rooms decorated just like the pictures, outfits that could make you feel like a whole new person. The catalog meant different things to everyone, but it brought us all to the same place. Around the table, around the couch, around the warm lamp on the side table that made the pages glow a little golden. I remember my mom brushing the cover with her hand, almost like she was dusting off something sacred. She'd say, "Don't bend the pages yet," as if we were handling an artifact from the future. And I remember leaning in, feeling that quiet electricity run through me. Because the moment the catalog arrived, you knew something special was about to happen. Not right away, not instantly, but slowly, gently, page by page. The arrival wasn't just the beginning of a shopping trip. It was the beginning of a journey, one that would take weeks, maybe a month. From the first page we touched, to the day a cardboard box finally landed on our doorstep. And every bit of that journey started right here. With that moment the catalog came home. You know, once the Sears catalog arrived, it didn't belong to just one person. It belonged to the whole house. And every family, mine included, had their own little ritual about who got to look through it first. In some homes, the parents always started with the practical pages. The sheets, the appliances, the tools. In others, kids would grab it first, racing straight to the toys or the clothes that made them feel grown up. But no matter the order, eventually, everyone got their turn. In my family, it usually began with my mom. She'd settle into her spot on the couch, the catalog resting on her lap like a newborn. She'd smooth the cover with her palm, a little gesture she probably didn't even realize she did, and then turn to the first page with this calm, almost ceremonial patience. My dad would lean over her shoulder, pretending not to care, but quietly scanning the tools, the jackets, maybe a new coffee maker. He'd point at something every now and then and say, "You think we could use one of those?" And she'd answer with that same half-laughing tone, "Only if it lasts longer than the last one." Meanwhile, my sister and I were hovering nearby, pretending not to wait, but absolutely waiting. We'd sit on the floor, tapping our fingers, trying to catch a glimpse of the pages as they turned. Every new section felt like a countdown to the moment we'd get the catalog in our hands. What made those moments special wasn't just the catalog itself, but the way it brought everyone together without trying. Nobody scheduled it, nobody planned it. It just happened, naturally, gently. The way families gathered around things before everything became digital and instant. Sometimes the catalog turned into a conversation. "Do you remember when you had one of these? Didn't Grandma have something like that?" And in those little comments, memories were passed down, quietly, unintentionally, like small gifts. I remember one year, my sister tried to claim the toy section before anyone else. She grabbed the catalog mid-page turn and ran to the carpet. My dad laughed so hard he could barely tell her to bring it back. And even though she got scolded, she still held onto that page like it was a treasure map she wasn't ready to share. Every family had moments like that, little snapshots of who we were, captured in the way we passed that catalog around, carefully, impatiently, lovingly. Looking back now, it wasn't really about the stuff inside. It was about us, how we gathered, how we talked, how we dreamed together without ever calling it dreaming. The Sears catalog had a way of reminding us that even simple things, a coffee table, a lamp, a quiet evening, could become a memory, a warm one, a lasting one. And in most homes, that shared ritual was just the beginning. You know, once the Sears catalog arrived, it didn't belong to just one person. It belonged to the whole house. And every family, mine included, had their own little ritual about who got to look through it first. In some homes, the parents always started with the practical pages, the sheets, the appliances, the tools. In others, kids would grab it first, racing straight to the toys or the clothes that made them feel grown up. But no matter the order, eventually, everyone got their turn. In my family, it usually began with my mom. She'd settle into her spot on the couch, the catalog resting on her lap like a newborn. She'd smooth the cover with her palm, a little gesture she probably didn't even realize she did, and then turn to the first page with this calm, almost ceremonial patience. My dad would lean over her shoulder, pretending not to care, but quietly scanning the tools, the jackets, maybe a new coffee maker. He'd point at something every now and then and say, "You think we could use one of those?" And she'd answer with that same half-laughing tone, "Only if it lasts longer than the last one." Meanwhile, my sister and I were hovering nearby, pretending not to wait, but absolutely waiting. We'd sit on the floor, tapping our fingers, trying to catch a glimpse of the pages as they turned. Every new section felt like a countdown to the moment we'd get the catalog in our hands. What made those moments special wasn't just the catalog itself, but the way it brought everyone together without trying. Nobody scheduled it, nobody planned it. It just happened, naturally, gently. The way families gathered around things before everything became digital and instant. Sometimes the catalog turned into a conversation. Do you remember when you had one of these? Didn't Grandma have something like that? And in those little comments, memories were passed down, quietly, unintentionally, like small gifts. I remember one year, my sister tried to claim the toy section before anyone else. She grabbed the catalog mid-page turn and ran to the carpet. My dad laughed so hard he could barely tell her to bring it back. And even though she got scolded, she still held onto that page like it was a treasure map she wasn't ready to share. Every family had moments like that, little snapshots of who we were, captured in the way we passed that catalog around, carefully, impatiently, lovingly. Looking back now, it wasn't really about the stuff inside. It was about us, how we gathered, how we talked, how we dreamed together without ever calling it dreaming. The Sears catalog had a way of reminding us that even simple things, a coffee table, a lamp, a quiet evening, could become a memory, a warm one, a lasting one, and in most homes, that shared ritual was just the beginning. Once the catalog was open, the real magic began, the choices. Every page was like stepping into another world, and each world felt alive with possibility. For kids, the toy section wasn't just toys. It was a universe in itself. Battery-powered cars that seemed to zoom off the page. Wooden trains that promised grand adventures across imaginary landscapes. Dolls with perfectly painted faces that could keep you company for hours. Action figures with tiny capes that somehow whispered secrets of courage. It didn't matter if you would actually get them. The thrill was in the dreaming. Just tracing the pictures with your fingers, imagining them in your own hands, imagining afternoons filled with laughter and play. That was enough to make your heart race. Every picture carried a story, a little window into a world you could almost touch. Then there were the clothes. The clothes. Corduroy pants with sharp, perfect creases, knit vests with bold, cheerful patterns, bell-bottoms that promised instant coolness when you walked into school. The colors seemed just slightly brighter than the reality you wore every day, and that was part of the charm. You could imagine yourself stepping out of the catalog into your own world wearing something new, feeling a little taller, a little more confident, a little more special. The tiny details mattered. The way a sweater's collar folded, the pattern on a scarf, the shimmer of a new shoe. All of it turned ordinary afternoons into little fashion shows in your mind. And the home items, they were special in their own quiet way. They weren't just practical. They were aspirational. Patterned bedspread could transform a bedroom from ordinary to a small sanctuary. A coffee set could make Sunday mornings feel like a celebration instead of just routine. Even small kitchen gadgets, like a shiny egg boiler or a hand-cranked mixer, seemed to hold the power to turn everyday tasks into tiny wonders. Each item had a promise, a story waiting to be lived in your own home. I remember leaning over the page, circling things quietly with a pencil, as if marking them somehow made them closer to reality. My sister would peek over my shoulder, whispering, "Don't circle that one, I like it," and we'd both giggle, each thinking we'd claimed it first. It was silly, yes, but also serious. In that moment, a pencil mark meant something, a small declaration of hope and desire. Some pages were explored together. We would compare notes, toys, clothes, home items, and sometimes quietly negotiate, planning what we would ask for first. What could wait? What was most important? It wasn't just about the items themselves. It was about imagining the stories they would create in our lives. Which doll would be my companion during rainy afternoons? Which sweater would I wear to impress my friends? Which kitchen gadget would make me feel grown up, helping mom bake cookies? The catalog didn't just display products. It taught anticipation. It nurtured imagination. It encouraged patience. It gave lessons in dreaming, in hoping, in waiting. Every page turned was an invitation to imagine, to plan, and to picture a world slightly brighter, warmer, and more exciting than the one you had at that moment. Looking back now, I realized the choices weren't really about the items. They were about storytelling, about creating entire little worlds in our minds. Worlds filled with laughter, adventure, and wonder. Worlds where the mundane became magical, where ordinary afternoons could feel extraordinary. And even now, decades later, I can still remember those pages, the dreams they inspired, and the quiet, wonderful anticipation of what could be. Once the choices were made, the next step was almost a sacred ritual: writing the order. No clicks, no instant confirmation, just pencil, paper, and intention. The order form was a small rectangle of possibility. You wrote your name carefully at the top, your address in neat letters, the item numbers lined up like secret codes. Sometimes there were spaces to write color, size, quantity. Every detail mattered, because a single mistake could send your dream astray. And you wanted your dreams to arrive exactly as imagined. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, leaning over the slip, pencil in hand, thinking carefully about every mark. The scribbled circles on the catalog pages guided me, but the act of writing it down felt like sealing a promise. Each number I wrote, each line I filled, made the dream feel a little closer, a little more real. Sometimes my sister and I would compare our lists quietly, whispering about which toy was most important, which sweater would make the best back-to-school outfit. My mom would remind us to write legibly, so the Sears folks don't get confused, she'd say with a soft laugh. And my dad would sometimes offer a tip, a practical note here or there, but mostly he watched, smiling at the seriousness with which we took this simple act. Then came the envelope, the fold, the seal, the little stamp pressed onto the corner. Each step carried weight. It was more than a piece of mail. It was a promise sent through the postal system, traveling miles and weeks to arrive in a cardboard box at your doorstep. I remember the feeling of holding that envelope in my hand. Small, light, yet heavy with anticipation. Walking to the mailbox to drop it off was like a mini adventure. You imagined its journey, traveling along highways, through postal offices, handled by unseen hands that would eventually deliver your wishes. There was something deeply satisfying about that process. The deliberate act of writing, folding, sealing, and mailing made the eventual arrival even sweeter. Every step, every careful pencil mark, every crease in the envelope added to the magic. And even though we didn't know exactly when the box would arrive, we felt the excitement build with each passing day. Because unlike today, where instant gratification is a click away, back then, anticipation was part of the joy. It was slow, deliberate, and absolutely worth it. In those quiet moments of preparation, with pencil in hand and a world of possibilities ahead, we learned patience, hope, and the thrill of imagining something before it existed. The order wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a bridge from imagination to reality. Once the order was written and carefully folded into its envelope, the next step was another small adventure, sending it off. There was a quiet thrill in walking to the mailbox, holding that slip of paper like it carried a secret. Sometimes the mailbox sat right outside the front door. Sometimes a trip to the post office was required. Either way, it felt momentous. I remember peeling a stamp from its sheet and pressing it onto the corner of the envelope, the faint sticky sound echoing like a tiny heartbeat. It was so simple, yet it made the order feel official, important, a little treasure in transit. Dropping the envelope into the box was almost ceremonial. You imagined its journey, traveling along winding roads, through bustling post offices, handled by strangers who were now, in a way, part of your story. And then, the waiting began. Days stretched into a week, and every morning we'd check the mailbox with bated breath, hoping for that small cardboard promise to appear. Back in 1978, the wait wasn't a nuisance. It was part of the magic. You couldn't click a button to track it. You couldn't speed it up with a courier app. You simply imagined it traveling, inch by inch, mile by mile, carrying your hopes along with it. The waiting taught patience in a way we rarely experience today. It taught us to treasure anticipation itself. Every glance at the mailbox, every day that passed without a delivery, made the eventual arrival feel bigger, brighter, more thrilling. And the family ritual continued during the wait. We'd talk about what might be inside, debate which toy would arrive first, or who would claim which jacket. Sometimes my sister and I would argue playfully over who got to be first to open the box when it came, my parents would smile quietly, letting us imagine and anticipate, enjoying the excitement as much as we did. Looking back, that slow, deliberate wait, it wasn't inconvenient. It wasn't frustrating. It was part of the story, part of the charm, part of the childhood magic that made finally tearing open the box so unforgettable. In a world of instant gratification today, we often forget how sweet the anticipation can be. Back then, every delayed moment made the joy that much richer. And in the quiet mornings, afternoons and evenings spent checking the mailbox, we learned that waiting can sometimes be the most wonderful part of all. And then, the day finally came. The mailbox delivered more than just paper that time. It brought a box, a real, tangible, heavy cardboard box, filled with the dreams we had circled weeks ago. I remember spotting it first from the porch window. The postal truck was still rumbling down the street, and my heart seemed to beat a little faster. The box had arrived, and with it, all the excitement, anticipation and imagination of the past few weeks. The tape pulled back with a soft tear that felt louder than it really was. Every crinkle of cardboard, every soft pop of packaging inside was a small thrill. We gathered around the box as a family, leaning in, waiting for the reveal. It wasn't just a package, it was a promise fulfilled. Opening it slowly was part of the ritual. We peeked at the edges first, catching glimpses of toys, clothes, or home items. The colors seemed brighter, more real, more alive than they had in the catalog. The texture of the toys, the feel of a sweater, the glossy sheen of a game box. All tangible now, ready to be touched, explored, and loved. Sometimes the box held surprises. Maybe a small item got jostled, a tag bent, but the magic wasn't lost. Each piece was exactly what we had imagined, or even better. And in those moments, laughter erupted. Small gasps of delight filled the room, and the living room felt warmer, richer, full of life. I remember holding a toy that had been only an image on a page a few weeks earlier. The weight of it in my hands, the bright colors, the promise it held. It was like touching the story we had imagined together as a family. Even the smallest items carried stories. A little spatula for the kitchen, a patterned hand towel, a game board. Suddenly, they were part of our daily lives, woven into the rhythm of our household. And the excitement wasn't just for the kids. Parents smiled, reminisced, and sometimes even joined in the unwrapping, marveling at the anticipation finally met. The arrival of the Sears catalog box was more than the arrival of objects. It was the culmination of imagination, patience, and shared excitement. It was the physical heartbeat of a family's hope. And it's that feeling, that slow, deliberate joy that lingers in memory long after the items themselves have been put away. And then, of course, the unwrapping was over. The toys were played with, the clothes worn, the home items used. But the magic didn't end there. In fact, that was just the beginning. I remember the stories we told afterward. Remember when we almost lost the doll in the box? Do you remember that sweater I spilled juice on the first day I wore it? Little memories that made us laugh, sometimes groan, but always smile. The catalog had given us more than objects. It had given us moments, little rituals, shared jokes, whispered debates over which toy was best. The quiet pride in holding the envelope in hand and knowing your dreams were on their way. Even years later, we would talk about it. The anticipation, the waiting, the joy of opening that box together. And perhaps the most important part, it reminded us of how patience could make something so ordinary feel extraordinary. The waiting, the hoping, the imagining. It all contributed to the joy. And it taught us a subtle lesson, that the journey, not just the destination, is where magic lives. Even now, decades later, I catch myself imagining a Sears catalog arriving on the doorstep, the crisp rustle of pages, the pencil in hand, the shared laughter with family gathered around. It's a memory that stays warm, like a favorite sweater, a familiar smell, a song from childhood. The Sears catalog wasn't just about toys, clothes, or home goods. It was about family. It was about dreaming. It was about small, quiet moments that become timeless memories. So whenever I think back, I remember not only what was inside the box, but everything that led up to it. The pages we turned, the stories we imagined, the anticipation we felt. and the way our hearts felt just a little fuller because we had the patience to wait. That, I think, is the true magic of the Sears catalog.